of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins. He's prophesying about Jesus' first coming and his second coming. But Jesus' second coming is Revelation 19:11, where the heavens open and the sky appears right on a white horse. And it says his eyes are blazing fire, robe dripping with blood, and his hands a two-edged sword, and he's coming to strike down the nations. I go, whoa, look out, this is Jesus, says on his side, written King of Kings, Lord of Lords. I go, but Lord, I thought you were the Prince of Peace. How could you be coming to make war? This does not compute in my mind. And then I began to realize, well, look at your county sheriff. Isn't he referred to as a peace officer? Yes. And he's packing a pistol and a taser and a nightstick and handcuffs. And I go, because he's what's called a peacemaker. This is important to understand. Peace don't just happen. We may be living in a peaceful society today, but total anarchy can come, because what's coming is an EMP attack. People need to listen to what's going on in the minds of the people on the other side of the world. Because like in an American football game, everybody knows there's two teams lining up. One get on the line, the other's in a huddle. Well, when they're over there in their huddle, whispering and talking about, they got a plan. They got a plan about what they're going to do. I mean, who on the other team would like to go over there and sneak and say, hey, what's their plan? What are they planning to do? You want to know that, wouldn't you? Well, I want to know what's going on. It's called, you know what the military calls gathering of information? It's called intelligence. Well, guess what? The general American society today, they're lacking intelligence. They don't have a clue what's going on, because they're relying on the mainstream media that's totally being controlled. But I'll tell you what's going on inside the minds of the enemy. I got a video where there was over 1 million gathered in Iran at the funeral of Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian commander. And a 24-year-old college student is saying, they killed him. They killed him. Why? Why? He says, is this democracy? Are we human or not? And he's crying and stuff. And then he says, revenge must happen. And it is certain. Revenge is going. And then his daughter, Qasem Soleimani's daughter, speaking to that crowd of 1 million people. She says, dark days are coming on the United States. And we will flatten their spider web for what they've done to my father. They're talking about taking down the web. They're talking about taking down the internet. They're talking about taking out our lights. It's the national power grid's going to go down. It's an EMP attack, and it fits the Isaiah 33 prophecy. After it says the destroyer has never been destroyed, when he stops destroying, he'll be destroyed, and the stopping is happening. And then it says, the brave men cry aloud in the streets, the envoys of peace are weeping bitterly, and the highways are desolate. There'll be no travelers on the road. I go, oh my goodness, it's talking about an EMP attack that's being described, because it disables all of our modern computerized fuel-injected systems, and nothing's going to run. Like, they turn the key off, and nothing's going to start. It doesn't work no more. The computer's been fried. Yeah, that's what happens. So you know what? Some of my friends, we talk about this stuff. We got some older vehicles with distributor caps, getting them all tuned up, spark plugs, making sure they'll run and operate, because we intend to be unstoppable. Nothing could stop us. We're going to continue to solve problems. When the problems rise up, and they're coming, you want to be able to deal with them, and I'm telling you up front, in advance, what's coming. And so you got to take the time. Time is short. That's why I woke up this morning in bed, and I just thought in my mind was urgent, urgent, urgent. Time is short. We need to be busy getting ready. This is what's coming. And it could happen by within less than 120 days, less than 4 months. When summer's near, it's at the door, June 21st, first day of summer. We don't know the day. Nobody knows the day. Nobody knows the hour. But the enemies are all stirred up. You see, after the funeral of the Soleimani, then the United Nations Secretary General, I watched a video of him, and he acts like he's the boss. They're saying global government's coming. It's going to happen one way or another, whether you like it or not, either by consent or by conquest. The conquest of this country, they're talking about it. They said if a non-nuclear proliferation can no longer be taken for granted, it's leading more and more countries to take unpredicted decisions with unpredictable consequences and the profound risk of miscalculation. They're talking about countries planning to do nuclear war. And then he says we're living in dangerous times. He says, my message is simple and clear. And he's talking to the United States, by the way. He says, stop escalation. Use maximum restraint. Restart dialogue. Come and talk to him. Renew international cooperation. Either cooperate with them, consent, or conquer. And then his final statement's only a minute long. Look it up, Antonio Guterres, January 6th. It's in one of my other videos. I have it in there. And he's saying, we should try to avoid war. It is our duty to avoid war. But you know what? War not going to be avoided. They're planning it. This is what's the United Nations multinational coalition. They're going to be led by Russia. It's Daniel chapter 7, the bear. The bear's told, rise up, go devour much flesh. It's Ezekiel 38, the army from the north, Russia, many nations with them. And with them is Persia, Cush, Lud, Put. Those are Ethiopia and Libya nations, the Black Hawk Down, Ethiopia, Libya, Gaddafi, Iraq, Saddam, nations where we've been, all together, led by the Prince of Rosh, which the Old Testament name Rosh, and Gog and Magog are Rasha, Putin. And Ezekiel 39, though, says that when they come, that God will be against them. When they come to the mountains of Israel, which I'm in Nevada, and so I'm telling you, Sierra Nevada mountains, they're going to fall on the mountains. That's what Ezekiel 39 says. I used to lay at night and think about these scriptures and go, Lord, am I supposed to be involved in this fulfillment of your scriptures? They will be stopped in the mountains. I go, you know what? I don't see any other way. What am I supposed to do? When you've been given understanding, and I'm going to tell you right now, because you're listening to my video and you're being informed, God's going to hold you accountable for what you do with the information that you have received, because it's valuable, and you got to put this information into action. Faith without works is dead. So understand this. We have an opportunity to get to work. We need to stockpile supplies. Joel chapter 3 has a simple command: prepare for war, rouse the warriors. He's talking about these times right now. And so I've never been in the military, and I used to struggle trying to ponder, what am I supposed to do to prepare for war? I could buy 1,000 rounds of 223, I'd get an AR-15 or whatever. And then one evening, an military expert made a statement I never forgot. He said, in all the histories of wars that have ever come and gone, is every single time two opposing forces are engaged in a conflict, he said, the side that always loses are the ones whose supplies are cut off. I go, wow. I go, you know what? I got to go get me some supplies. I can't get too many supplies. The more supplies I get, the better. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been exhausting. All my personal financial resources are being utilized wisely. Don't be foolish about it, but collect as much of the essential types of commodities that will be useful in a time when the highways are deserted, the supplies have been cut off. It's talking about it. It's all talking about the United States, and people don't see it. There's so many religious people out there, they don't see past the end of their noses. They have ears to hear, but they don't hear. They have eyes to see, but they can't see. You know why? Because in order for them to believe it, they would have the prophets in the days of Ezekiel and Joel and Jeremiah and all them, they would have to be writing in their prophecy that the United States of America will suffer this, judgments will come upon them. Well, it's real simple when you read 1 Corinthians 10:11 that says all the stories in Israel's history serve as warnings and examples. So like a waiter who carries a tray and he's coming to serve the glasses to the people at the table or whatever. Those stories in Israel's history, they serve as warnings and examples. Guess what? 2 Peter 2 says that Sodom and Gomorrah is an example of what's going to happen. That's one story. But Egypt is another story. Look at Egypt as an example. Greatest kingdom in the history of the world at their time. That's who we are today. They had a dual society. A nation with a lot of Israelite slaves and a bunch of Egyptians who were the slave masters. And the Israelites did all the work. I go, Today, they say that about 50% of our society is on some form of government payroll or government subsidy, whether they have a disability or Social Security, or they're a government employee, a highway worker, a policeman, a fireman, a county tax collector, assessor's office people, or federal employees, state employees, county employees, city governments, half. And now an old saying like Will Rogers, they say, the government, it doesn't have a dime to give to anybody except that it has to find someone that actually earns and produces money and income and take their money from them by force against their will. In order for the government to have any money to give to anybody, that's what they have to do. I go, so that's an example. But let me tell you what's a real good example. 7 abundant years came before the 7 lean years, and the drought is looking like drought right now. But we're going to go through 7 years of the tribulation. And what did the Pharaoh's dream? What was it about? He saw 7 fat cows that were consumed by 7 skinny cows. And what did Joseph do? He stockpiled 20% of the abundant years. And by the time this first lean year began, he had 140% of an annual abundant year piled up. He even lost track of how much he had. And that's what we need to have, a vast amount of supplies stockpiled. Smart thing to do. That story's an example for us. But when in the end of the story of the Egyptians and the Israelites, Pharaoh's army is bearing down on the Israelites. They're trapped by the Red Sea. It looks like it's hopeless. There's no means of escape. But just like Daniel 9:11 or Revelation 19:11 says the heavens open, the clouds part. That's what's going to come, because the parting of the Red Sea is an example of the clouds parting this time. The Pharaoh's army coming bearing down on the Israelites back then is an example of God's people at this end time, where an army of 200 million rises up, which is going to be the 4th beast in Daniel. And for 3.5 years, or it says time, and half a time, and it's the same beast in Revelation 13 where it has 42 months. They will oppress the saints. We're here. We're going through this. In Daniel, there's a verse that says the people who know their God will firmly resist. So when do those of us who are alive rise to meet the Lord in the air? When he appears in the air in Revelation 19:11. When he appears in the air, first the dead in Christ will rise, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. It says the trumpet sounds, that's the trumpet sounding, and the Lord's appearing and the clouds are parting. The dead in Christ who are rising is Ezekiel 37, the valley of dry bones. The bones all rattle together, flesh appears upon them, they stand upon their feet, and guess what it says they are? They're a vast army. And in Revelation 19:11, the Lord appears. Following him are the armies of heaven. The reinforcements arrive from heaven. Those of us who are fighting, and it says we're losing Daniel, read it, Daniel 7. The 4th beast has 7 horns, 10 horns. 1 horn's waging war against the saints and defeating them. Well, that would pretty much is describing that the saints are here. And there's a verse in Matthew that says, if those days were not shortened, no flesh would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. It's obvious we're here until the Lord arrives, and that is when we do rise to meet him in the air, because it's a joining of forces. The forces on this earth who are busy resisting, but it does say in Daniel, another when. Pay attention to when. Whenever you see when, pay attention. It says when the power of the holy people is finally broken, then the end will come. See, the end is the Lord is coming as faithful and true. He's going to wait until the last minute to come to save us with impeccable and perfect timing. He's coming to rescue us, just like Luke chapter 1 says. It's a military rescue. The army of 200 million in Revelation 9, it is China with a multinational coalition, including other nations like North Korea, Iran, other countries. And who are they? They're the weeds, because it says in Revelation 9 that they will be 1/3 of mankind will be killed by fire, smoke, and sulfur. Well, that's nuclear. It's totally nuclear. It's in Revelation 15. John stood by what looked like a sea of glass mixed with fire. And standing by the sea of glass are those who have been victorious. They're dressed up in like white robes or white uniforms. It's like a victory. They've been victorious. And they have harps, or they're playing a band. It's a band. They're singing. What are they singing? The Song of Moses. How does it go? Great and marvelous are your works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, O King of the ages. Who shall not glorify thy name? For all nations will come and bow before you and give honor and glory to your name. Because that sea of glass mixed with fire, nuclear bombs melt the sand into glass. It is the nuclear destruction of 1/3 of mankind. Oh my goodness. This is Matthew 13's story about the tares and the wheat. They're growing together until the time of the harvest. And when, again, there's another when. When it's harvest time, first gather the tares in bundles to be burned. And then put the wheat into the barn. The barn's the 1,000-year period coming. Glory to God. We're looking forward to such an amazing, bright future. The Lord descends. Our enemies are destroyed. There's going to be 1,000 years of peace on earth. A future so bright. It says human mind cannot even comprehend the great things that God has in store for those who love Him. Jesus is coming. He's coming to save us from our enemies. Isaiah 2 says, never again will men train for war. Nations will not rise up against nations anymore. Swords will be beat into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. Well, that's metal recycling. But spears become plowshares? Swords, pruning hook, those are implements of agriculture. The future focus of mankind will be on food production. Never again will men, there'll be no more hunger, no more sorrow, no more crying. The kingdom of heaven has come to this earth. The future is such an amazing, because what are we in right now? Matthew 24 says, wars, rumors, wars are the beginning.